You're sitting outside a cave about 40,000 years ago. The sun has disappeared behind the mountains, and the only light left comes from a crackling campfire. Around you, your family is finishing the last pieces of roasted meat. Somewhere in the darkness, wolves are howling. A child is quietly playing with a smooth stone while the older hunters repair their spears for tomorrow. There's no phone to check, no television, no books, no music, no internet. Tomorrow will probably look a lot like today. By modern standards, this should be unbelievably boring. But here's the strange part. Ancient humans probably experienced boredom far less often than we do today. In fact, the very feeling you're trying to escape every time you open social media might be one of the newest emotional problems in human history. That sounds impossible. After all, we have movies, games, vacations, millions of songs, and unlimited entertainment. They had rocks. So why are we constantly searching for something to do? While they spent hundreds of thousands of years living almost the same life every day without losing their minds? The answer begins with a simple misunderstanding. We assume boredom happens when there's nothing happening around us. Evolution suggests the opposite. Boredom isn't created by an empty world. It's created by a brain that expects more stimulation than its environment provides. And for almost all of human history, the environment never stopped demanding attention. Imagine waking up as a hunter-gatherer. Before you even take your first step, your brain is already scanning the world. Did it rain last night? Are there fresh footprints outside the cave? Where are the birds flying this morning? Can you smell smoke from another tribe? Did that strange sound come from the bushes? Or was it just the wind? Every answer could mean the difference between eating dinner or becoming someone else's dinner. Nature didn't allow autopilot. It rewarded attention. Even a short walk through the forest wasn't just walking. It was reading thousands of tiny clues. Broken branches, fresh animal tracks, the smell of wet soil, the movement of insects, the direction of the wind. A single mistake could end your life. Modern life is different. Most mornings, your biggest challenge is deciding whether to answer an email now or later. Your food is already waiting in the refrigerator. Your house protects you from almost every predator on Earth. You don't need to search for water. You don't need to identify poisonous plants. You don't have to wonder if something hidden in the grass wants to eat you. From a survival perspective, your brain has almost nothing urgent to solve. Ironically, that's where the problem begins. Researchers who study attention often describe the human brain as a prediction machine. It evolved to constantly monitor the environment, searching for changes, opportunities, and threats. For millions of years, that system was busy every waking moment because the natural world was endlessly unpredictable. Then, in just a few thousand years, a tiny fraction of our evolutionary history, we built cities, routines, and predictable lives. Our environment became safer, but our brains didn't evolve nearly as fast. And that left us with an ancient mind trapped inside a world it was never designed for. Which raises a fascinating question: if boredom is really an evolutionary mismatch, then why did evolution give us the ability to feel bored in the first place? Because as strange as it sounds, boredom may have been one of the greatest survival tools our species ever developed. To understand why ancient humans rarely felt bored, we first need to understand what boredom actually is. Most people think boredom means having nothing to do, but psychologists see it differently. Boredom isn't the absence of activity. It's the absence of meaningful stimulation. Your brain isn't asking for entertainment. It's asking for something worth paying attention to. That's a huge difference. Imagine you're sitting in an airport waiting for a delayed flight. Nothing dangerous is happening. Nothing exciting either. Time feels painfully slow. Now imagine you're hiking through a dense forest. You're walking at the same speed, covering the same distance. But suddenly, every sound matters. A branch snaps. Birds stop singing. You notice strange footprints in the mud. The clock hasn't changed, but your brain has. The first situation offers almost nothing your ancestors needed to solve. The second activates systems that evolved over millions of years. This is where evolution tells a fascinating story. For nearly all of human history, survival depended on curiosity. A person who ignored unusual sounds probably didn't live very long. Someone who noticed a fresh animal track had a better chance of finding food. Someone who investigated a new fruit, a different river, or a strange cave might discover resources the rest of the tribe had missed. Curiosity wasn't just a personality trait. It was a survival strategy, and boredom may have evolved to support it. Think of boredom as your brain's alarm clock, not an alarm warning you about danger, but one telling you that your current activity is no longer useful. If you've already searched one area and found no food, staying there wastes energy. If a hunting strategy stops working, repeating it forever won't help. If the environment changes, your behavior has to change too. Boredom gently pushes you toward exploration. Without it, humans might have stayed in the same place, repeated the same mistakes, and ignored better opportunities just beyond the next hill. Researchers studying motivation often describe boredom as a signal that encourages exploration when the current situation no longer provides enough value. In other words, boredom doesn't tell you something is wrong. It tells you something else might be better. That's an incredibly useful survival tool. Now imagine living as a hunter-gatherer. Every day brings different weather, different animal movements, different plants, different tracks, different dangers, different opportunities. Even if you hunted in the same valley for years, the valley itself never repeated exactly. Seasons changed, rivers shifted, animals migrated, storms reshaped the landscape. A fallen tree created a new crossing. Fresh berries appeared where there were none yesterday. Nature constantly generated novelty. Modern environments rarely do. Many of us wake up at the same time, drive the same roads, sit at the same desk, open the same apps, eat similar meals, watch similar screens. Our surroundings become predictable within minutes. Ironically, our brains were never designed for that level of repetition. The same neural systems that once searched forests for movement now refresh social media feeds, looking for something new. The mechanism hasn't changed. Only the environment has. And that's why scrolling can feel strangely addictive. Every swipe promises novelty. Most of the time, it delivers almost nothing meaningful. But your ancient brain keeps checking anyway because, for hundreds of thousands of years, looking for something new usually paid off. The problem isn't that your brain is broken. The problem is that it's still playing by prehistoric rules in a world that has completely rewritten the game. Which leads to an even bigger question. If ancient humans were constantly surrounded by real-world novelty, what exactly was happening inside their brains that made everyday survival feel endlessly engaging? Because the answer lies in one tiny chemical that still controls much of your behavior today. And understanding it changes the way you see boredom forever. If boredom is your brain's way of telling you to find something more meaningful, then what exactly makes something feel meaningful in the first place? The answer starts with one of the most misunderstood chemicals in the human brain: dopamine. Today, dopamine has become internet shorthand for pleasure. Every time someone talks about social media, video games, or chocolate, dopamine gets blamed as the reason people can't stop chasing them. But that's not what dopamine evolved for. Your brain doesn't release dopamine because you found something enjoyable. It releases dopamine because it thinks you found something important. That's a critical difference. Millions of years before humans built cities, earned salaries, or watched YouTube videos, dopamine had one job: keep our ancestors exploring. Imagine you're walking through an unfamiliar valley. You've never been here before. Suddenly, you notice strange footprints pressed into the damp ground. Your brain immediately pays attention. Where did they come from? Are they dangerous? Could they lead to food? Or are they leading you straight toward a predator? Before you even answer those questions, your brain rewards your curiosity. Not because you've discovered anything yet, but because investigating might improve your chances of surviving. Researchers believe this reward system encouraged exploration. Long before humans understood why, they were exploring. Individuals who paid attention to small changes in their environment often found new water sources, safer shelters, edible plants, or migrating animals before everyone else. Over thousands of generations, natural selection favored those curious minds. In other words, curiosity wasn't optional. It was profitable. Now think about how unpredictable prehistoric life really was. No two hunting trips were identical. One morning, a herd of deer might appear where there had been none for weeks. The next day, heavy rain could erase every animal track you'd been following. A river that provided fish yesterday might overflow overnight and become impossible to cross. Even collecting berries wasn't repetitive. Plants ripened at different times. Some became poisonous under certain conditions. Others disappeared entirely after a dry season. Nature constantly forced humans to solve new problems, and every solved problem taught the brain something valuable. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have noticed something remarkable. People rarely perform only one task. A hunting trip quickly becomes a lesson in weather, animal behavior, navigation, cooperation, memory, and decision-making. While searching for food, someone might discover medicinal plants. Children observe adults making stone tools. Others notice fresh predator tracks. Around them, birds signal danger. Insects reveal seasonal changes. And distant smoke hints that another group may be nearby. One activity naturally blends into 10 others. Nothing exists in isolation. Compare that to a modern office. You may spend 6 straight hours looking at the same screen, answering nearly identical emails under artificial lighting without anything meaningful changing around you. Your body stays still. Your senses receive almost identical information minute after minute. Yet your brain was designed to monitor forests, rivers, weather, animals, and other people all at the same time. It's hardly surprising that it begins searching for stimulation somewhere else. This also explains something curious about children. Give a child an expensive electronic toy. They'll play with it for a while. Then they'll often become fascinated by the cardboard box it came in. To adults, that makes no sense. To evolution, it makes perfect sense. The box is unknown. Unknown things demand investigation. That's exactly the behavior that once helped our ancestors discover entirely new parts of the world. The desire to explore isn't childish. It's ancient, and perhaps that's the biggest misunderstanding about boredom. Ancient humans weren't entertained because life was easy. They were engaged because life never stopped changing. Every sunrise introduced new questions. Every journey carried uncertainty. Every decision mattered. Their brains weren't searching for artificial novelty. Reality itself provided more than enough, which makes modern boredom feel even stranger. Because if our brains evolved in a world overflowing with real challenges, why do we now spend so much time creating artificial ones just to feel engaged? The answer begins about 12,000 years ago, when humanity made one decision that changed the relationship between our brains and boredom forever. For almost 300,000 years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. Then, around 12,000 years ago, everything changed. Not because our brains evolved, but because our lifestyle did. Instead of following migrating animals, we started planting crops. Instead of exploring new landscapes, we stayed in one place. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And for the first time in human history, many people began doing the exact same thing. Every single day. At first, farming sounded like a brilliant idea. You didn't have to chase food anymore. You grew it. But there was a hidden cost. A farmer might spend weeks planting the same seeds, months caring for the same field, hours repeating the same movements under the same sun. Compared to the unpredictable life of a hunter-gatherer, farming introduced something evolution had rarely seen before: routine. This doesn't mean ancient farmers were constantly bored. Their lives were still filled with droughts, floods, diseases, failed harvests, and dangerous animals. But compared to the endless variety of hunting and gathering, daily life became far more predictable. And predictability changes how the brain responds to the world. Psychologists have found that the human brain is incredibly good at adapting. A new house feels exciting. After a few months, it feels normal. A new car becomes ordinary. A new phone eventually becomes just another phone. This process is called habituation. The more often your brain encounters the same experience, the less attention it gives it. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. If you've already learned everything about a familiar object, spending energy analyzing it again would be wasteful. Your attention is better spent looking for something new. For ancient humans, that something new usually appeared naturally. For us, it often doesn't. Instead, we create novelty. We binge-watch another series. We refresh social media. We buy new gadgets. We scroll through hundreds of videos we'll forget tomorrow. Not because we're lazy, because our brains evolved to keep searching. Here's something remarkable. The average hunter-gatherer probably experienced more genuine uncertainty before lunch than many modern office workers experience in an entire week. Would today's hunt succeed? Would another tribe appear? Would the weather suddenly change? Would predators return? Would they discover a new water source? Every question demanded attention. Now compare that to your average Tuesday. You already know where you'll eat, where you'll sleep, how you'll get home, what your schedule looks like. Even the notifications on your phone become predictable. Ironically, the safer our world became, the harder our brains had to work to find something worth noticing. Neuroscientists sometimes describe attention as a limited resource. Your brain simply can't treat everything as important. If it did, you'd become overwhelmed. So it filters. It ignores familiar sights, familiar sounds, familiar smells. That's why you stop noticing the ticking clock in your room or the hum of your air conditioner. The information is still there. Your brain has simply decided it's no longer useful. The same thing can happen with daily life. When every day looks almost identical, your brain gradually stops treating it as interesting. That's when boredom begins to appear. Not because nothing exists around you, but because nothing seems important enough to deserve your attention. This also explains why travel feels so exciting. When you visit another country, everything changes. Different languages, different food, different streets, different smells, different social rules. Your brain suddenly wakes up. You're paying attention again. You remember tiny details because everything is unfamiliar. For a hunter-gatherer, that heightened state wasn't a vacation. It was ordinary life. Every journey through the wilderness demanded complete awareness. Every landscape was full of information. Every sound carried meaning. And perhaps that's why modern humans spend so much money chasing adventure. Camping, mountain climbing, scuba diving, safaris, exploring ancient ruins. They're not just hobbies. In many ways, they're opportunities to give an ancient brain the kind of environment it evolved to understand. But there's one final piece of this puzzle. If boredom helped push humans toward exploration, then without it, would our species have ever crossed continents, invented civilizations, or become the dominant species on Earth? The answer might completely change the way you think about one of the most frustrating emotions you experience today. So, why does boredom exist at all? If it's so uncomfortable, why didn't evolution simply remove it? Because boredom isn't a design flaw. It's a survival mechanism. Imagine a prehistoric family that always stayed in the same valley. Year after year, they hunted the same animals, drank from the same river, and slept in the same cave. At first, everything worked perfectly. Then the climate changed. The river slowly dried up. The animals migrated somewhere else. Plants stopped growing. If that family refused to leave because they were comfortable with what they already knew, they probably wouldn't survive for very long. Now imagine another group. They become restless. One hunter suggests exploring the mountains beyond the valley. Another notices birds flying toward an unfamiliar forest. Someone else wonders what's over the next hill. That restless curiosity leads them to fresh water, healthier hunting grounds, and new resources. One group stayed. The other explored. Evolution consistently rewarded the explorers. In that sense, boredom wasn't the enemy of survival. It was the engine that pushed humans forward. Anthropologists believe our ancestors spread from Africa to almost every corner of the planet over tens of thousands of years. They crossed deserts, climbed mountain ranges, survived freezing tundras, and eventually reached continents separated by vast oceans. None of that happened because humans were satisfied staying exactly where they were. Somewhere, someone looked at the horizon and wondered what was beyond it. That simple question changed history. The same mental system that once encouraged a hunter to explore, a new valley eventually encouraged sailors to cross unknown seas, scientists to test impossible ideas, and inventors to build technologies that transformed civilization. Boredom didn't disappear as humanity advanced. It simply found new targets. The challenge is that modern society has become incredibly good at silencing boredom without actually satisfying the need behind it. When your brain starts searching for something meaningful, a phone is only a few centimeters away. Within seconds, you can watch hundreds of videos, read thousands of comments, or scroll through endless images. It feels like exploration. But biologically, it isn't the same. Your ancestors explored places. We often explore feeds. Your ancestors solved real-world problems. We frequently solve algorithms designed to keep us looking for the next piece of content. That's an important difference. Psychologists have noticed that meaningful challenge creates fulfillment, while endless passive stimulation often creates the opposite. The more effortlessly novelty arrives, the less valuable it begins to feel. It's similar to eating dessert all day. The first bite is exciting. The 20th barely tastes different. Your brain adapts. Then it asks for something even newer. And the cycle repeats. Ancient humans experienced novelty because the world constantly changed around them. Modern humans often manufacture Novelty, because the world around them has become remarkably predictable. Ironically, many of the activities that make us feel happiest today look surprisingly prehistoric. Walking through forests, learning a difficult skill, building something with our hands, exploring unfamiliar places, cooking over a campfire, playing music with other people, having long conversations without distractions. These activities demand attention, curiosity, movement, and cooperation, the very qualities that shaped the human brain for hundreds of thousands of years. Perhaps that's why they feel so deeply satisfying. So, why didn't ancient humans get bored? They probably did, from time to time, but not in the way we do today. Their lives were filled with uncertainty, discovery, danger, learning, and constant adaptation. Reality itself supplied enough meaningful challenges that their brains rarely needed artificial stimulation. Our brains, however, are still running that same ancient operating system inside a world of predictable routines, endless convenience, and unlimited digital entertainment. And maybe that's the real lesson. Boredom isn't your brain telling you that life has become empty. It's your oldest evolutionary instinct, quietly whispering that, somewhere beyond your current routine, there's still something worth discovering.